Between 1946 and 1956, 163 patients died under the care of the same doctor. All of them wealthy, all of them elderly, all of them alone. Eastbourne, a quiet seaside town on England's south coast, a place where the wealthy came to retire and live out their final years. For some of them, it would be the last place they ever saw. His name was Dr. John Bodkin Adams. And when detectives finally came to his door, his response was calm, unhurried, and utterly chilling. "Murder? Can you prove it was murder? I didn't think you could." To every patient who knew him, Adams was the ideal physician. Kind, attentive, always available. The sort of doctor who would sit beside you in the dark and hold your hand until morning. His patients followed a consistent pattern: elderly widows, no family nearby, substantial personal fortunes, and an absolute, unquestioning trust in the quietly spoken man who arrived carrying a black leather bag. Of his 310 patients, 132 left him money in their wills: cash, furniture, jewelry. And one patient left him her Rolls Royce Silver Ghost. For years, gossip had moved quietly through Eastbourne. Whispers at garden parties, knowing glances between nurses and pharmacists, but no one spoke officially. He was, after all, the doctor, and doctors were not questioned. Adams had been practicing in Eastbourne since 1922. By the mid-30s, the pattern was already visible. By the 1950s, the number of deaths surrounding him had become impossible to ignore. His weapon required no black market, no smuggled poison. It was morphine, heroin, drugs he prescribed himself entirely legally. In the right doses, they controlled pain. In the doses he administered, they stopped the heart. The method was consistent. He arrived after dark. He instructed nurses to leave the room. Then he administered the injection himself behind a closed door with no witnesses and no second opinion. One nurse who assisted Adams during a patient's final hours said to him directly, "You do realize, doctor, that you have killed her." Adams looked at her, said nothing, and left the room. The escalation was always gradual. First, enough to dull the pain, then enough to ensure sleep, then enough to produce a coma. When the end came, it came quietly, in the night, and it always looked natural. On every certificate he wrote the same words: natural causes. He certified the death himself, approved the cremation himself. The body was destroyed, the evidence became ash, and the estate passed to its beneficiaries. Cremation was Adams's strong preference for his patients. Once cremated, there was nothing left to examine. No tissue, no toxicology, nothing but a name written into a will and a check arriving in the post. The gifts were accepted openly, without embarrassment. A Rolls Royce collected from outside a patient's home. Bank transfers received within days of a death. Furniture removed by appointment. All of it completely visible. When investigators reviewed the records, the scale was staggering. Adams had been named in hundreds of wills spanning 3 decades. One newspaper printed a headline that stopped the town cold: "Inquiry into 400 wills." Edith Alice Morell was 81 years old. A wealthy widow, partially paralyzed after a stroke. She trusted Adams with complete confidence. That trust, investigators would later conclude, had almost certainly cost her life. Adams began with modest doses of morphine, justified by her pain. He then added heroin. The doses increased steadily. During this same period, Morell rewrote her will multiple times, sometimes including Adams, sometimes removing him. He kept returning. On November 13th, 1949, Edith Morell died. Adams signed the certificate within the hour. Cause of death: cerebral thrombosis. Natural causes. No autopsy was requested, no coroner was called. No one pushed for one. 7 years later came Gertrude Hullett. While alive, she had personally given Adams over £1,000 in cash. When she fell into an unexplained coma, he waited 3 full days before calling a specialist. The specialist arrived and was immediately alarmed. He suspected acute barbiturate poisoning and urgently requested a post-mortem. Adams delayed. He raised objections. Gertrude Hullett died on July the 23rd, 1956. The inquest recorded a verdict of suicide. But at Scotland Yard, a different conclusion was forming. It was time, finally, and long overdue, to open a formal investigation into Dr. John Bodkin Adams. Detective Superintendent Herbert Hannam of Scotland Yard arrived in Eastbourne in autumn 1956. One of England's most experienced homicide investigators. He brought a team, and he brought a list. 163 names, all dead. What Hannam found was a system of extraordinary consistency. Hundreds of suspicious wills, death certificates signed by one physician, cremation forms approved without independent review, a pattern operating openly for more than 20 years, hidden not in darkness, but in plain sight. Then came a letter that compromised everything. The British Medical Association wrote to every doctor in Eastbourne. The message was unmistakable. Patient confidentiality extends to other physicians' patients. Do not speak to detectives. Say nothing. The national press descended on Eastbourne within days. Cases surfacing as far back as 1935. One Fleet Street reporter described it simply, "Word was that Adams had killed so many patients, police had moved before their case was fully ready." On the morning of his arrest, Adams showed no anxiety, no panic. He straightened his jacket, looked at the officers and said, "Murder? Can you prove it was murder? I didn't think you could." Calm, unhurried, utterly composed. He was charged with the murder of Edith Morrell, dead 6 years earlier. December the 1st, 1956, the trial would be held at the Old Bailey, and it would change the legal definition of medical killing forever. March 1957, the Old Bailey, the Central Criminal Court of England and Wales. The trial of Dr. John Bodkin Adams opened before a packed gallery and the full national press. From the first day, it was called the trial of the century. The prosecution was direct. Adams had administered lethal doses of morphine and heroin for personal financial gain. The defense countered with an argument British courts had genuinely never been asked to consider before. The defense rested on one principle. Adams was not a murderer. He was a compassionate doctor managing the suffering of a dying woman. The morphine was not a weapon, it was mercy. And the law, they argued, had no language for what he did. 4 nurses testified that Adams routinely administered grossly excessive doses of narcotics and always demanded they leave the room beforehand. But under cross-examination, their recollections contained inconsistencies. The defense barrister exploited every single one. The jury retired on April the 9th, 1957. They deliberated for 44 minutes. Not 6 days, as the Shipman jury would 4 decades later. 44 minutes. They returned. The foreman stood. Not guilty. Adams walked free from the Old Bailey. The Attorney General immediately dropped all remaining charges. The final count? 163 suspicious deaths investigated, 1 trial conducted, 0 convictions recorded. In 1961, 4 years after his acquittal, Adams was reinstated to the medical register. He returned to practice in Eastbourne, resumed seeing patients, elderly patients, wealthy patients, in the same town, as if nothing had ever happened. The legacies kept arriving until his final years. Will after will, year after year. When Adams died in 1983, his estate was valued at £402,000. The gifts had simply never stopped coming. Dr. John Bodkin Adams died on July the 4th, 1983, aged 84, in Eastbourne, where it had all begun. On his own death certificate, filed by his attending physician, the recorded cause of death was natural causes. I have given morphine at the bedside of dying patients. Every physician knows what I mean when I say this. There is a line between controlling suffering and ending a life. Adams knew exactly where that line was. The question is, which side of it he stood on. The police archives were released in 2003. Investigators concluded Adams had, in all probability, killed multiple patients deliberately. But probability has no legal weight. In court, in 1957, probably was not enough. And probably never will be. 163 deaths, 132 wills, 1 acquittal. Lord Justice Devlin reflected on it for the rest of his life. His conclusion: the law sometimes allows the guilty to walk free. John Bodkin Adams died a free man. Make of that what you will.